So creation of this web app actually went by pretty quick. We can see in the resource group that 3 resources got created. There's the actual app service, there's the app service plan, which we gave a name to, and the application insights object as well. So there are 3 resources inside of our resource group. If we go up to here where it says deployments once succeeded, we can actually look at that deployment. It took 53 seconds to create that. So it's actually pretty quick, relatively, to get a new web app created if you ever needed to do that. So now this web app is up and running, but at the current time, there's no code in there. We haven't actually written any code. We're not deployed any code. So what do you think is going to happen when we go to the URL? So I'm going to click on this, and we're going to see that Microsoft has basically a standby web page that says your app service is up and running. Okay, so basically this is a Microsoft page that tells us everything's working. When we deploy our app service, our web app into here, it's obviously going to go away and be replaced with whatever we have. We can see that our standard S1 plan did get created and it is set to be running. We do have even the option to FTP up our code, so we can use the FTP deployment username to the particular URLs being provided if we wanted to deploy that way. But like I said, Microsoft Visual Studio actually makes it pretty easy to deploy into a web app, and we'll demo that in a second. Now, I did mention a few things. The custom domains, if we do want to create our own custom domain, we can go down here into custom domains. There is the option of setting it to HTTPS only. We can add the host name for our custom domain down here. And our app service domains, we can actually buy the domain here as well. Some of the plans come up with backup options, and so we can set up our regular backups into the backup section. Now, we made some decisions when we were setting this up, but we didn't make a lot of decisions. Microsoft has basically hidden most of the settings for the web app into the application settings tab. We can see here Microsoft is telling us which applications it supports. By default, .NET Framework and PHP are turned on. And we can see that it's 4.7 in the version number and 5.6 for PHP. If we wanted to use a Python or Java app, we actually have to go into the app settings to enable those. One of the principles of security is to turn off things that you're not using. And so having Java enabled but never used would be a slight security risk. So it's turned off by default, and you can see the Python is turned off by default as well. We have all sorts of options. This is going to be very similar. If you're familiar with setting up IIS, then you're going to see a lot of the same options here. We get 32 and 64-bit decisions, always on. And so if we want our web app to always be responsive instantly as opposed to having to spin up, the integrated and classic options in terms of pipelines if your application requires one or the other. You can set HTTP version, session affinity, so this is if you support cookies and having the cookie drive the same user to the same server. We haven't talked about deployment slots too much and how the FTP based deployments work. We can actually disable that if we don't intend to use it. So we have a lot of options. They're all in the application settings set here. All right, so we've got a basic web app going. There's no code deployed to it. Let's continue on.